What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm your host, Haize. On today's episode, we'll be discussing DeMar DeRozan being named to the All-NBA second team, the worst signing of the offseason. Had one of the best seasons of his career. We'll touch on that a little bit, but we're also going to be continuing our draft player profiles. This time, we'll be talking about EJ Liddell and Patrick Baldwin. EJ Liddell is a player that you guys have been asking me to talk about for a while. Patrick Baldwin gotten a couple votes. He was second in voting yesterday, so I'm going to go ahead and cover him as well. So we'll get into all that and more right after our intro.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
All right, Bulls fans. So first off, shout out to DeMar DeRozan for being named to the All-NBA second team. It's well-deserved. Honestly, if it wasn't for the collapse in that second part of the season, he may have even been first team All-NBA. But as we know, Tatum really came on in the second half of the season while DeMar fell off. So that kind of worked out the way that it is. But DeMar DeRozan being, said to be one of the worst signings of the offseason, the fact that the Bulls paid too much for him, all of that had a great season for the Chicago Bulls. Now, one thing that did officially come out with this now, we can talk about it. The contract numbers are going to be locked in at this point. Zach LaVine did not get named to an All-NBA team, so that means he did not qualify for the Supermax. So what that means is that the Bulls can give him that $212 million contract, whereas any other team can only offer him a contract up to $157 million. Now, there's been some misconceptions, and I think I also initially misspoke on it as well. Even if the Bulls complete a sign and trade with the team, that other team still cannot give him the $212 million. So that means that for any other team, even if it comes in the sign and trade, it's only going to be that $157 million. So if Zach LaVine signs, if whatever happens this offseason, if it ends up with Zach LaVine being on another team, he can only get that $157 million. So that's going to be quite a cap hit for him. Of $55 million, he's going to be missing out. Again, a sign and trade is not going to allow him to get that. So even if he does go to another team with a sign and trade, he still can only max out at $157 million. So that's going to be a $55 million loss for Zach LaVine in that case, unless he does sign a shorter contract. If Zach LaVine decides to do like a 2-1 with a 2-year deal with a 1-year option on the end of that, he can then re-sign and get raises to kind of recoup some of that money and get even more money. But he would have to play well. That'll be his age 30 season, things like that. Don't want to bog you down with capology, but I did want to bring that up because there's been some serious misconceptions on what a sign and trade, how that affects Zach LaVine's possible contract. But let's stay focused on DeMar DeRozan here. Shout out to DeMar DeRozan for being named second team All-NBA, and it was well-deserved, and I'm glad to see that he did that in the Chicago Bulls jersey. The question that I want to present to you guys to answer down below is, do you think DeMar DeRozan can be named to another All-NBA team next year? Do you foresee that happening the next 2 years while he's still in the Bulls uniform? Let me know about that down below. Go ahead and sound off on that. But let's go ahead and get into our player profiles. This is listen, I've been having so much fun doing these draft player profiles. You guys have been enjoying it. I like to see the conversation, everything that's been going on. And this time we're going to be talking about EJ Liddell. Now, this is a player who he's 21 years old. He's improved every season that he was in college. His efficiency actually got better with increased minutes. But let's start with the physicals. He's 6'7", 245 pounds, a 7-foot wingspan. He can play power forward. He can play some small forward as well. EJ Liddell, really, much like we're talking about Tari Eason yesterday, they fit kind of similar roles. Tari Eason is a little bit younger. That's why he's projected to go a little bit higher than EJ Liddell. As we know, with draft combine stuff, upperclassmen, they always start dropping around this time. It's very rare that an upperclassman kind of rises during this, because I think teams start talking and they focus more on youth and projections and potential. Whereas they don't usually see the potential as high for an EJ Liddell or someone who played in college up until their junior year. Now, one thing that I will say is, while his ceiling may not be super high right now, just looking at it, but he has the raw skill set to do everything. EJ Liddell, let's go over the numbers. So in his initial freshman year, he averaged 6.7 points per game on 16.6 minutes per game. In his sophomore year, with a rise in minutes per game, with 29.4%, he averaged 16.2 points. And then last season, his final season in college basketball, 33 minutes a game at 19.4 minutes per game. Now, one of the things that makes this a little bit different for him, because you can easily talk yourself out of a player by saying, hey, Well, it makes sense. He got more minutes. He averaged more. His efficiency increased every year. His field goal percentage in his freshman year was 46%. In his sophomore year, 47%, and almost 50% in his junior year. His three-point shooting as well. Not only did his attempts per game rise, but his percentages rose as well. In his freshman year, only averaging 0.83 points per game and hit that at 19%. Now, he made a huge leap in his sophomore year, averaging almost 3 3-pointers per game and shooting those at a 33% clip. And then in his junior year, taking even more threes at 3.83 3-pointers per game, so almost 4, and hitting that at a rate of 37%. So what we're seeing with EJ Liddell is that he works on his game. He grind. He improved his shooting stroke and that's rare to see. With a rise in attempts, also a rise in percentage. That is somebody that you want to bet on. But some of the more eye-popping things for EJ Liddell is on the rebounding and defensive side. 7.9 rebounds per game in his junior year. 2.5 assists per game, 6.6 steals per game, but 2.6 blocks per game for EJ Liddell in his junior season. Listen, I think that EJ Liddell is going to be the pick here. While I've talked about the pick that I want to see is Mark Williams, the pick that I see being more likely is EJ Liddell, and the reason why is because of where he's slated to go in the draft. Right now, he's gone all the way down to being like one of the top 2 picks in the second round. Now, some people may say that that's a reach. I'm going to compare this to Taj Gibson. Taj Gibson was expected to be drafted at 38th, and as we know, the Bulls drafted him in those low 20s, and look at how that worked out for the Chicago Bulls. Sometimes, if you believe in a guy, you just have to draft him. And EJ Liddell is just a basketball player. He's somebody who plays with a lot of energy. He plays with a lot of focus. Yeah, his lateral quickness isn't the best. He doesn't have great explosiveness, things like that. He's not a quick player, but he's just a guy who's just strong, and he gets it. And I know people are kind of tired of the small ball, and I know you're gonna get comments, oh, a 6'7" power forward. Listen, this is today's NBA. And some of the player comps for him make sense. If we're looking at the comps for a player like EJ Liddell, again, this is not meaning that he's going to reach this level, but it's a Grant Williams, Draymond Green type of player. And those are both players that technically are short for being power forwards, but they go out and they play and they get things done. EJ Liddell is the player that I think the Bulls will draft. Again, Mark Williams is the pick that I hope the Bulls do draft, but EJ Liddell, I think, is going to end up being the pick for the Chicago Bulls, and he's going to be a hell of a pick. EJ Liddell has a skill set that he can come in and contribute right away for the Chicago Bulls with his energy, with his shooting, with his defense, with just being an all-around ball player. And that's somebody you want on a team. That's somebody you want also coming off your bench and to be very solid. Could EJ Liddell eventually be a starter? Yeah, it's possible, especially depending on roster construction and things like that. I think Patrick Williams and EJ Liddell would work very nicely together. They have some overlapping skill sets for sure, but I think EJ Liddell is at least now Patrick Williams, I said it before, Patrick Williams is going to be fine at power forward, at least until DeMar is not here anymore, but EJ Liddell is definitely going to be fine playing power forward at the NBA level. The physicality, I don't expect to get to him at all. It's all about, and look, EJ Liddell, while his ceiling may not be super high, his floor is extremely high. EJ Liddell, best believe, is going to be a player that I think contributes on the NBA level for years and years to come. It may just be a bench role. It may end up being a starter role, but EJ Liddell is a player that I would not mind at all the Chicago Bulls drafting and wearing the Chicago Bulls uniform and representing our team and our squad. Let me know what you guys think down below on EJ Liddell. Just like I said, looking at his numbers, looking at the fact that his efficiency went up with more minutes, which is rare in basketball. Listen, that's huge. That is huge. And at his size, being able to go out and get in the rebounds he did, his rebounding rate is also good. The 2.5 blocks per game, all that is going to be good. Now, some of the things that could end up hurting EJ Liddell is, like I said, that lack of quickness. Some of the quicker power forwards could possibly give him some work. Also, some of the longer power forwards as well. Also, is he going to be a player that's easy to guard on the NBA level? I would say no, because he has the ability, and as you guys are going to have seen in the highlights that I've played, he can shoot the ball, he can stretch the floor. He also he can get it to the cup. Like, EJ Liddell has a very solid, well-rounded game for the NBA. And while, yeah, it may not be easy for him against certain matchups, which that applies to everyone. I just trust this guy's work habit. I trust his motor. He's just a guy that just seems like he's going to go out and get it done and that you can trust. And he's going to play with a lot of heart, play with some of that grit that we need on this team. So I want to hear from you guys down below. Sound off. What do you think about EJ Liddell if he is the pick for the Chicago Bulls? I've already said it. I think he projects to be possibly a big part of the Bulls bench for years and years and years to come if he does end up being the pick. We'll see if he ends up developing into a starter. But shout out to EJ Liddell on that one. Let's go ahead and get into our next player profile. This one is going to be Patrick Baldwin. Now, Patrick Baldwin, 6'10", 220 pounds. He's 20 years old. He'll be 20. I think he turns 20 in December. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he'll turn 20 within the start of this season. Small forward, power forward is what he projects to come. Some of the comps for him have been Jalen Johnson. He has a 6'11" wingspan, so not the wingspan of like an EJ Liddell or Tari Eason, two players that we've already talked about here. He does have a lot of upside, and Patrick Baldwin would be, because he was only a freshman. He only played the 1 year in college. He averaged 12.1 points per game on 28 minutes per game, 34% field goal shooting, and then 3-point shooting of 26%. So he has some things here. Patrick Baldwin, and I guess one of the things that I've noticed that I've been doing with these player profiles is that I give, usually it's one player who's ready to contribute now and one who's more of a potential pick. Somebody that you come in and you do have to develop a little bit more, maybe until you really see some things for him. Now, can he come in and get a few minutes for the Chicago Bulls right away if he ends up being the pick? Yeah, it's possible. But the things that hurt Patrick Baldwin is that he doesn't have great foot speed, so that's going to hurt him defensively. He isn't a great passer, and as we know with this Bulls team, one of the things that makes us, and when we're most dangerous, is when we're moving the ball around freely. He's also not the best dribbler at all. He's not somebody who can create their own shot either, at least not right now. If he can develop that part of his game, it'll make it a lot better. He also has a little bit of a slow release in what I noticed looking at his tape. He's not much of a defender either on that end of the ball. So it really, looking at him, he has a lot of the physical things that you look for. He has a lot of the offensive skill set that you may look for, especially drafting at the 18th pick. And he'll definitely be around there when the Bulls pick. Right as of right now, he's slated to go 23rd in most mocks. And some he slips down to the second round as well. I just don't know if drafting a freshman that isn't ready to contribute right away is what the Bulls would do with the pick. Like I said, Patrick Baldwin does have some upside. Like, I don't want to act like he's a terrible player right now, but that's going to take time to develop. And on the team already, where you're developing Patrick Williams, you're still developing Ayo Dosunmu to some degrees, you're developing Marko Simonovic, and we still don't really know what's going on with him and how he's going to be ready to contribute next season. Do you draft a player in Patrick Baldwin when there are going to be players on the board who specifically can contribute right now for the Chicago Bulls? That's going to be the question and the conundrum when it comes to a player like Patrick Baldwin. It's not that he's a bad player. It's not that he may not develop into a hell of a player on the NBA level and be able to contribute, but it's that where the Bulls are right now, trying to get as close to being competitive for a title or a long playoff run as quick as possible. Do you have time? Do you have time to wait on a player like this to develop, like I said, specifically when there are other options who can give you a lot right away and still have some upside? It's not like they don't completely have some upside. So it really depends on that. Now, he's a smart on the offensive end. He's a smart basketball player. He posts up smaller defenders right away. So it's not an issue at all with him going to the post or not being creative when it comes to the offensive end. Now, like I said, wouldn't trust him to create his own shot, but he's a smart player. He has a nice fadeaway shot. He's great off the ball. He moves a lot off the ball. And one of the things that I've talked about very heavily with the Chicago Bulls, as much as that, people talk about iso ball, one of the things that did hurt this team a lot was the lack of ball movement without the ball. Patrick Baldwin is a hell of a mover and a cutter without the ball, and that is something that helps him get the points that he's able to get. Again, the way that I see Patrick Baldwin, I would not personally make him the pick for me, but I want to hear from you guys down below. What do you think about Patrick Baldwin? Do you see him more as a potential, right? He's more of a player, if you do draft him, you're betting on his potential than him to be able to contribute right away. And what is your mindset? Do you think the Bulls are going to draft somebody who's able to give them something right away, to produce right away? Again, I always do trust AK is probably going to draft the best available, who they see that. But best available also can mean a lot. Is it the best available who can give you something now? Is it the best available that you see 5 years down the road? It's a lot of different things of how AK and Eversley can really look at this draft And I do think that if they're going to bet on potential, and that's another thing that could hurt Patrick Baldwin being the selection for the Chicago Bulls, because if they are betting on potential, if they're going best available, not necessarily somebody that can contribute now, I see other players that have higher potential down the road. I would look at a Jalen Williams from Arkansas as a better pick there if you're betting on long-term potential. I also look at Jaden Hardy being that as well. So it just really depends. I'm not as high on Patrick Baldwin, if you guys can't tell from just the way that I'm talking about him, but I want to hear from you guys down below. How do you feel about Patrick Baldwin? Again, let me know down below what you guys think. That's it for Chicago Bulls Central today. Unless any other news drops, make sure you're following the podcast at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text and or voicemail to sound off on those draft prospects or who other people you would want to see the Bulls draft, what do you think about the draft prospect coverage so far? You can do that 773-270-2799. That's it for me for today, guys. Like I like to end every show on, go Bulls. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.